Crafted here. I have a project. We had an opportunity to upgrade from our Sears Craftsman lawnmower to a better condition used John Deere mower. And this mower had some problems. It's got a crack on the deck I have to have welded, and in particular it's consuming oil. And the neighbor, I think he sold it to me for whatever his down payment was on his Kubota. I got $500 in it. I think it's about $1,000 tractor, but he was concerned the engine was going south on it. Well, the engine sounds perfect internally. There are no inside noises, no knocks, no nothing. I mean, not cold, not hot. It sounds beautiful. So I took a gamble on it. And you know, I guess this repair is a story about not being afraid to go with your instincts. I'm very confident that I've solved this problem. Now, this mower doing my yard, which I forget exactly how big it is, but it's 1.5 acres anyways, plus or minus half an acre. It used half a quart of oil the first time, which was tremendous. And it didn't smoke per se. It didn't seem to smoke. So it's like, well, where's the oil going? Well, it's not dripping out on the ground, so it's obviously burning the oil. But it's not burning it quickly enough that you can see the smoke. Well, in keeping it topped up and using it a few times until I could get around to have the time to make this repair, I've used it a few times and I can smell the burning oil, or the combusting oil, I guess you would say. And if the air is really still, you see it accumulate around the tractor as you're riding around. So it is burning it. And I noticed that the last time I used it, when I shut it off, there was smoke coming out of the intake here too. Now, a few mows ago, I'd done some research, and I discovered that these Intek engines from Briggs and Stratton, which are very reliable, very good engines, they will occasionally have a head gasket failure. And you say, well, how could a head gasket failure cause an engine to consume oil, to burn oil? Well, as it turns out, the way these are designed, here's my gasket kit I have, valve cover gasket, and in the cylinder head gasket, we see all these cylinder head bolt locations. I'm not sure if that's a bolt or a dowel pin, It's probably a small bolt. And there's no bolt through here. So the head's not being squeezed as tightly here as it is around the rest of this. And as it turns out, they develop a seepage where combustion pressure gets into the crankcase, into this galley right here. And this pressurizes the crankcase. Of course, while the engine's running, the oil is in a mist in the air inside the crankcase. And this is being pushed with this pressure, this mist of oil, into the crankcase ventilation system. And guess where it dumps out? It dumps out into the intake. And so that's how it's burning the oil, by an indirect path, not by getting by the rings. It seemed to be the most plausible explanation, fit with all the evidence that I've seen of the tractor. So I'm going to make the repair. And I'm very, very confident that I'm going to have a nice $1,000 tractor for $500 that doesn't smoke or burn oil when I get done. So we'll see how it turns out. But really, I just want to emphasize, don't be afraid. Get in there and do a project, do a little research. You can save yourself a lot of money by doing things and repairing things that other people are quivering in fear about. You don't have to be afraid. You can take things apart, you can figure it out. Now, I haven't had a head off of a single-cylinder Briggs engine since I was a kid. I've rebuilt car engines and stuff in the past, so I'm not afraid or unfamiliar with this stuff. So let's get started. Part of being a good mechanic is being patient. And one of those steps of patience is to clean something before you work on it. Now I'm going to open up the engine, I don't want any dirt or debris to get inside the engine while it's open. I want to maintain its sterileness, as sterile as it may or may not be. So I'm going to blow it off a little bit, especially up around the head. That should keep any unnecessary dirt from getting inside from the engine. The cover here, which is important for airflow, the flywheel has fins on it, and it sucks air in here and throws it around the engine down across the fins. This has to be removed because it overlaps the head. And I think a couple of these bolts, which seem very large to hold on this plastic cover, are actually head bolts. And I hope I don't have to take these all the way out. These are probably just threaded into the top of a special head stud. We'll see. Not very tight. They're just threaded into the casting of the head. Now, I've never done this job before. I haven't looked at the parts breakdown. You're just going to watch me discover how it comes apart right along with you. Let's see, I already took the air cleaner cover off. Get rid of the filter. A little bit of debris on the wrong side of the filter. There's another filter in here. Filthiness. Okay, so that's loose. See, we're firm back here. Oh, there's a bolt. Clearance issue here. I think I'm going to need a wrench if it won't spin out by hand. I got it loose. Went ahead and returned the wrong tool to the toolbox. I don't need piles of tools over here. Now this wrench I'll leave over here on my rolling work stand because it fits things. But that'll save me some mess and confusion putting it back together, because when it comes time to go together, I'll only have the tools here that I need. The other bolt seems to be on this device. I'm not sure what that is. Must be some part of the fuel system. Now there's another way these can fail. I've loosened the wrong bolt here. I'm going to snug that back up. There's another thing that can cause these to use oil that's a little less common. And I'm going to go ahead and clean that and inspect it while I'm here. And that's if the crankcase ventilation system gets clogged with carbon, then pressure cannot get out of the engine easily. And since it can't get out, it starts building up and forcing oil around the cylinder walls into the past the rings up into the combustion chamber. So while I'm here, I'm going to take a look and service that as well. Turns out it's a good idea to remove this anyways. That'll let me get the fuel line that's running to it out of the way. Now, I notice this has 3 lines running to it, and one of the lines runs back over to the oil dipstick tube. And it sounds kind of crazy, but maybe that's a return line so that if you overfill the oil, it ends up in the gas. Heck, I don't know. Boom, there it is, the offending bolt. There are different qualities of these Intek engines. This is the 18.5 horsepower. This mower is 10 to 12 years old. And I understand later on they corrected this head gasket issue. There's a web in this area, and there's a a bolt that goes here, which helps hold this side of the head gasket down better. O-ring, there we go. Wow. Wasn't too hard. Need to get this muffler out of the way. I'm going to loosen these bolts on this exhaust flange a little bit at a time. I don't want to bend the exhaust flange. And I haven't looked under the tractor yet to see if there's any pan I need to remove to get the muffler out. I probably do. Would stand to reason they would have something to protect grass from touching the red hot muffler and starting a grass fire. Alright. And stuff loose. See, that flange can't fit through that hole. Oh, wow. Wow. So that just slips up over that. It has to be assembled that way. Wow. I don't know if I like that. Matter of fact, I'm real sure I don't like it. Wonder if I can expand this pipe so that it fits in there more tightly. There's the bolts that came off of the muffler. I'm putting back in the holes on the muffler. Now, if this was a really complicated job like an automobile engine, I would take all of the bolts from the exhaust system and put them in a bag with a label. I would do that as I went. Take the valve cover off. This isn't a flathead engine like the Briggs and Strattons of old. This is overhead valve. Stamped sheet metal rockers, which is really about what I would expect. Alright, getting that stuff out of the way to start doing head bolts. I'm not going to take them completely out. Just going to break them loose. First, see, there should be one there. Yep. Yep, there must be one more I missed. And these go around here like a horseshoe, and there's none here. And this is where the this is the push rod tube. That rectangular hole I showed you in the head gasket is the section the push rods go through. And yes, I did take the intake manifold loose off camera. There's just 2 bolts. It's hanging there on its fuel line and control cables. And it'll be just fine. Turn one of these back in a few threads just so the head doesn't fall off. It shouldn't fall off. Normally it will be stuck to the head gasket. Didn't have to take the spark plug out. Probably should before I torque these head bolts up. And see, I've got the socket coming out against the plug. Could end up breaking the plug really easily. Yeah, it'll have to come out or I won't be able to get this head bolt. Yes. 5/8. So the head moves there. She's ready to come off. Wow. Now that's the most carboned up spark plug I've ever seen in my life. Look at that. Oh my goodness. I can't believe it was running. Wow, I think I'm going to replace this. It's been in here for 10 years. Look, all of the cavity around the center electrode insulator is all full. Amazing. Amazing. Okay. Get our last little safety bolt out here. Oh. There we go. Look at the junk that fell in the engine. It's probably fell off the inside of the head. Let's get the camera over here. Bring you guys in. So this is the area that we would predict would be leaking. Now notice these black marks here. That is where the exhaust gases have been blasting through there, discoloring the aluminum. Now notice this is probably going to be loose. Look at that. Look at that. So this is all kind of adhered. I'm just kind of lightly rubbing on it, but this is loose. So this is definitely was the cause of our problem. We'll get to see a little better when we get the head gasket the rest of the way off. So see the familiar appearance, and then look at this. This is all eroded. Like it's the metal inside. There's no gasket over that. So Shazam, we hit it. This is what our problem was. I think it's interesting how this engine is constructed. I don't know. It's interesting that this is clean and then these fins back here are dirty. Well, the threads were definitely in here, so this isn't a separate piece from the rest of the block. Well, I've got a little bit of dirt in here. I'm going to get all of it I can see. The piston's down far enough. I can move it down a little farther, I believe, so we'll be careful about keeping everything as clean as possible. Wow, I'm very happy. Very happy to have found what I predicted would be there. Now I've got to get all this stuff cleaned up. Get prepared for the new head gasket. And get the head cleaned up. The fluid in my cleaning tank is still new, so I'm trying to keep the worst of everything out of there. I'll re-lubricate the rocker arms. This will be rinsing the lubricant out. When I get a lot of this coked up carbon, it's just like gravel in there. Look at that. Terrible. But a gasoline engine isn't made to burn oil. The more oil it burns, the more carbon you're going to have in the cylinder. Carbon comes from other sources also. Now I got to be careful not to obsess over this because I own the tools to do I own a Sioux valve grinder left over from my dad's shop, and I used to do high-end valve grinds for him occasionally. 3-angle work. Let's see if we can get this off with a brass brush. So it'd be real easy for me to obsess over this and do a whole valve job. But as you can see, it only took me, I'm sure I'll have it cut down to a shorter time, but it only took me about, I'd say 30 minutes to get the head off of this. It's no big deal to get in here and do this later if I decide I need to. This engine runs so good. I just don't think it needs anything like that. participated in the rebuild of a Yamaha generator once, 1,000-watt Yamaha. Had lots of hours on it. And of course I had to port and polish the head while we had it apart. And yes, it still ran fine. Basically using the wood as a scraper to knock off some of this stuff. It's important to get all the gasket material off. By leaving it on there, I won't be able to get a good seal. I'm holding this utility knife blade very low to the aluminum. Don't really want to dig off any aluminum. And incidentally, if I had my milling machine, which I will have eventually, I probably would set this head up and deck it. Take a few thousandths off of it just in case it has a shrunk spot here. I don't have the tools to do that, so it's not going to happen. I do have this. Let's see what we get here. It appears to be touching all the surfaces, so that's pretty good. A little more aggressive stainless steel brush in the combustion chamber here. You may have noticed that I dropped one of the push rods. That's still sitting over there on the floor, and that was the bottom push rod. The top push rod is up on my work table. I'm going to make sure I put those back where they came from, because they've got a length, and I'll be changing the head gasket here, which will change the distance the rocker arms are away from the from the tappets, or what's lifting the pushing on the push rods. So I'll have to do a valve adjustment. I haven't looked up the clearance on that yet, but it should be pretty easy to find. And when I set up this parts cleaner, I thought I'd be using it for machine restorations. Little did I know I'd be doing an engine job. Now the problem with carbon in a cylinder is it can glow red hot and cause pre-ignition in the cylinder head here. So we don't really want any foreign objects in the cylinder head. And pre-ignition is pinging. If you've ever heard an engine ping while it's running, it's very hard on the rod and the wrist pin. So by having no little sharp edges and grits of carbon sticking up or clinging to the spark plug, in the case that we had here, you won't have any glowing little corners or tips, and that'll prevent pre-ignition. Of course, I could have done this with simpler things. Spray on purple power, carburetor cleaner, gunk. Sure is nice to have a parts washer. There's no point in putting all that nastiness in my clean parts solvent tank. Even if you're working out of a parts solvent bucket, it's worthwhile to try to keep it clean as possible, as long as possible.